Hello, I'm Marina Johnson, and this is TABLEWORK, a TAPS podcast series where we interview the artists and theater makers behind our productions on what it takes to get their productions from the page to the stage. This episode features TAPS Lecturer Rotimi Agbabiaka, who is directing the TAPS Spring Mainstage play. Join us as we learn more about the upcoming production of Romeo and Juliet. Rotimi, I'm so excited to talk to you about Romeo and Juliet today, and I would love to start with why Romeo and Juliet? What drew you to this play right now?
I many reasons. I love the work of William Shakespeare. I think there's just those plays continue to be done. 400 years later for many reasons. One of which is just the timelessness of the characters and the situations and the feelings and experiences that are so eloquently and beautifully expressed in them. And so it's always a good time to do Romeo and Juliet, in my opinion. And I also I'm drawn to this right now because there's such an exuberance and an anarchy of language and experience in it, in the middle of a society depicted in the play that is so oppressive and violent in so many ways. I think, as I was first thinking about the play in the context of this production, I was really struck by how in Verona, in the Verona of the play, that death is such a looming presence, such an immediate reality for the characters in ways that in our contemporary society that may not always be the case. We're all, going to die, and I think on some level we all know that. But I also don't know that we have the experience that these people in the play have, where death is around the corner. You could, say the wrong word to someone, and you know start a fight that results in someone being dead by sword fight. The characters are um, have all these premonitions of death. The play begins with a chorus that essentially lets us know, what is fated, and that, the death um, is coming, is unavoidable of these star-crossed lovers. And so as I considered that, I wondered, like, yeah, like, what do you do when you're so aware of how fleeting life is, how and I believe in this play, what's wonderful and beautiful about it is that these characters, these people, their response to that is to live in an extremely exuberant way. I mean, the language is so playful and full of pleasure, the pleasure of wordplay and wit and puns. And then the lovers at the center of the story love in this really with this intensity, right? This sort of insatiable impatience that almost, they know on some level that they don't have too much time, and so they spend that time loving intensely and living intensely. And I thought that was really exciting to engage with a world in which people live like that. And as I thought more about it and spent more time with the play, I certainly saw parallels to our uh, present day, when I think certainly in this country, we're more aware, I think, of the uncertainty of life, of the uncertainty of, the things that maybe we thought would last forever or we thought were unassailable. And what do you do um, when life itself, really sort of reminds you that it's so uncertain, that no moment is to be taken for granted, because you don't know, if you'll have it again. And I think this play um, explores or presents people who seize life, vigorously, because it's so precious and so fleeting.
I love the idea of seizing life and really, I mean, you articulated loving and living so intensely. I think those are such beautiful themes to bring to the surface here. And I'm curious where your Romeo and Juliet is set. Is it in this time period? Like, where and when are we?
Yeah, so we set our production in um, Italy, where we're, sticking with the setting, but we were that's in play, but we have set it in particularly in the early Baroque period um, in Italy. So this is around the beginning of the 17th century, just about maybe 10 or 20 years after Romeo and Juliet was first performed in England in 1594. And I was drawn to this time because it was a time of extremes. Um, uh, on the one hand, in Italy at that time, in the various city states that made up, what is modern day Italy, um, there was this emphasis on really ornate and elaborate um, and exuberant art, particularly as a result of the Roman Catholic Church's response to the Protestant Reformation and this desire to attract people back to the church, to establish the church's presence and control by using the power of art to inspire and seduce. And so all these artworks were being commissioned, and these ornate churches, these beautiful sculptures, these beautiful paintings. Were being created. And so there was such a flowering of really dramatic art. Painters like Caravaggio, sculptors like Bernini were really creating these works of huge drama and huge passion, ecstasy in so many forms, religious, sexual, uh, spiritual. Um, and and so while this was happening, there was also at the same time this really sort of seedy underbelly of violence, this a society in which these competing or these really powerful noble families kind of ran um, these city states and had their own kind of warring factions and little armies and so there was this sort of extreme beauty in art, but also extreme violence and extreme struggle among factions for control, and it felt like a really exciting setting to place these larger than life characters who live, extremely and respond to the extremity of their situation by grabbing hold of life. And I think the artwork that inspires our design, Caravaggio, the playing with light and dark, the stark contrasts in those works, the sinuous and sensual curves of Bernini sculptures, all of those things felt like really beautiful ways of situating ourselves in a world of very passionate people, um, with really large emotions and large language with which to express um, those very big emotions.
That's beautiful. And I mean, I think hearing about the extremity and the contrast is so exciting. And it makes me, I mean, I think maybe first talking about the language and then maybe talking more about the design, both that you just brought up. But Shakespeare's language is so rich and heightened. And have there been any exciting discoveries or surprises around that? Or how do you feel like that's really shaping this world?
Yeah, I think one of our goals of this production is to really um, look at the play. I'm uh, as a director, I especially when it comes to Shakespeare and this particular language, which is so rich with um, a kind of specificity in the way that the rhythm of the language works, the rhythms of the characters, the way they breathe, the clues that Shakespeare has embedded in the language for the actor. As an actor, he wrote for actors, and he wrote to really enable his actors to learn the parts really quickly. Do 10 plays in 2 weeks, and so there are these clues embedded in the language that are really so exciting to discover as an actor and as a director and as a theater maker. And so my goal with this production and our goal as an ensemble is to really, yeah, to see like where does the language take us, where does it take us when we really play with that rhythm, like the score, like a musical score, and notice the places where the rhythm is irregular, where the rhythm breaks, where and see where the images take us. And I think one of the things that's been really wonderful and exciting is just how um, much food the language is for the imagination, and how much um, we can respond to those prompts from the language. We're only in our second week, so we're still somewhat early in our exploration. But one of the things that we played with on our first day actually was making these tableaus just based on images, lines from the play, lines from the script, and and it was incredible to see how, I mean, we have an amazing ensemble of actors in this play, really wonderful actors who are so talented and so have such great instincts. And so just in playing around and trying to bring the world of the play to life and figure out, explore how we were going to create this world, just in responding to those prompts, right? You know, in very, you know, we did this exercise where you made a tableau in 10 seconds after hearing a prompt. And there were these amazing, beautiful, sculptural scenes that began to emerge in the work that we and students were doing. And it was quite wonderful. We hadn't really talked about um, too much about the style of the world. We'd seen some design presentations, but even just responding to lines like, you know, at my poor house, look to behold this night, earth treading stars that make dark heaven bright. In response to that, you know, the whole ensemble created this insane, massive, you know, sculpture that looked like, you know, like a Bernini sculpture, like, you know, a fountain in Rome or something, you know, really ornate, twisted bodies and people lifted up in these really amazing ways. And I think that moment um, exemplified for me just the way that that those images can sort of inspire our imagination. The language inspires imagination, and our goal with this production is to make that language clear and vivid, so that all of us together in the space, the performers and the audience, are invited to go somewhere imaginatively that is beyond, you know, um, anywhere we could go on our by ourselves, and really have this shared experience of creating this world together, both, you know, with what people are literally seeing and hearing on stage, but also with the pictures that come up in your mind as you hear the language, and immerse yourself in it.
Yeah, and alongside the images that the language is helping create in the minds of both the performers and the audience, what images are you working with as far as design is concerned? Or is there a particular design element that you're particularly excited about? I know it's still early, but I'm assuming these conversations have been happening for some time.
Yeah, there's so much wonderful design that I'm excited about. It's you know, we're running with our Baroque Italian inspiration, and so there's just it's just a very sumptuous world, one that feels like it's been around for a very long time. This ancient grudge has been going on for centuries, perhaps. um, and it's a world of, you know, excess in terms of, you know, even wealth, or the display of wealth, and a kind of sumptuousness that comes with that. So there's a lot of leather and velvet and metallics. Um, and but one thing I'm really excited about in an overall sense is just the configuration of the space that we're going to be in. We're performing the play in the round, and so the stage is in a circular configuration. There's audience on all sides of the performers, um, and there's also some elements that allow action to happen, not just in the center, but behind on the sides, um, of the audience. And I think what we're finding in rehearsal, and what I hope will continue to evolve as we rehearse and perform, is that really creates an intimacy between audience and performer, and a real sense of feeling experience for the audience of being in the middle of the action. The audience will be the citizens of Verona. The audience will be the fighters, who, you know, who the prince yells at. The audience will be there to be confided in by the characters, to help the characters figure out, you know, what to do, where to go. Um, and so I'm really excited. We're finding it's a really great opportunity and challenge to stage in the round and to really figure out, yeah, how do we um, share the story with everyone. And we've um, made some wonderful discoveries already, and I look forward to making more. But I think that the way that we've configured the space is going to really make the play feel very immediate, and um, dare I say, visceral, for everyone involved. And I'm really excited for that shared experience that the audience and the performers and the designers and everyone involved will have.
Definitely. And I think the viscerality, I mean, the way that you're describing the configuration, it sounds incredible. And I love the idea of the immediacy. I'm curious, the play is often seen as tragic inevitability, but it's about choice and risk and urgency. And you've talked a lot about the way this world is being set up, and I love the way that you've painted the contrast. I'm curious how you're thinking about the stakes of loving dangerously in this production, or how you're sort of looking at some of those sort of larger themes.
Yeah. Um, I agree. The play is, yes, about choice, and in addition to this fated, this fate that drives the outcome or the destiny of these characters. Um, I think in terms of the stakes of loving dangerously or loving fully, um, I think one of the things that I'm interested in and that we're exploring as we move along is our human tendency to not necessarily be rational beings, to know, to follow impulses, to be led by impulses and follow them that are not entirely within our control. And I think um, one of the ways that expresses itself is in the language, the way language sweeps these people along, the way that they try to find words to express things that are really difficult to express. The feeling you have when you first fall in love with someone, when you first discover what love is, um, the tendency to violence that perhaps we all have, and some people give in to more than others. The way that a simple taunt or insult can suddenly lead to a life changing, life altering, life ending um, decision or situation or moment. Um, and so I think what I'm hoping for as we keep exploring and what we are focusing on is everyone trying to make the best decision, trying to do something that will result. I think about Friar Lawrence, the character of Friar Lawrence, who's this man of religion and of science, who really thinks that he can, through will and orchestration, can change this society, can bring about an end to the feud and the fighting, and who um, I think in his journey realizes that he couldn't, that his best laid plans, so to speak, resulted in this really tragic end. Um, and so I think what's exciting about this is that these characters may not have the ability to change their ultimate fate, but they do have the ability to make something of each moment they find themselves in. And when I think about just sort of the way that human beings throughout history have survived all sorts of situations or regimes or unimaginable situations, there is something about being present for the moment that you're in and um, making the most of the moments that you find. And so I think I don't know yet. I think we're still asking questions, and I love to ask questions in a performance and not necessarily feel like I have the answer or present an answer. Um, but I think in asking questions about how much power do we have to change certain things, whether or not we have the ultimate power to do so, I think we certainly have the power to seize a moment or to make the most of a moment or to decide perhaps where we're going to focus our energy in a particular moment. And I'm excited for this production to be a way for us to really yeah, like see what does it mean to make the most of the moments you have, and to um, regardless of your power to effect a global change. um,
Definitely. I mean, I think those questions are so resonant right now. And we can end with, and maybe you've just given us plenty of questions to think about, but I'm always curious, um, asking directors, and not in a prescriptive way, because I think many directors are hesitant to talk about this in for the fear that it'll be prescriptive. But I'm curious, maybe the questions you just mentioned are the questions you want the audience to walk away thinking about. Are there other questions, or are there particular, even if not questions, are there images or things that you want them to walk away thinking of from this production?
yeah, great question. I think I think what I hope the audience experiences and leaves with is um, leaving the theater and realizing, or experiencing and realizing, I suppose, that the world is a bigger and richer place than it seemed like when they first stepped in. Um, that that they see something that might remind them of falling in love, or what it was like, or what it is like, and maybe even shows them some aspect of it that they didn't consider, perhaps, or that they had forgotten, or that they didn't realize was also possible as part of the experience. Um, I hope that they see something about, maybe the nature of violence, or the nature of youth, or family, even what parents have tried to do for their children, or how parental and um, filial perspectives can clash. Um, uh, I think, yeah, I hope that somehow when they leave, yeah, that the world feels both more beautiful and more dangerous than it was when they entered, and that somehow um, they're able to, dare I say, appreciate it more, or at least have a new way of seeing some of these experiences, or that we all undergo, that we all encounter in our lives. Ultimately, I think, yeah, I hope that, yeah, that they feel more as a result of being in the theater, and that somehow that carries on beyond that experience, and allows them to see the world with more sensitivity and more color than they did perhaps when they walked in. Yeah, that's what I hope, in a general sense, at the audience.
Oh, it's beautiful. And I mean, I'm the idea of going to the theater and feeling more is it's I think what I always hope for, to really get to be in touch with this other world and to think about my world differently and to feel more. So, Rotimi, you've told us these beautiful details. I'm so excited. I know you're still in week 2 of rehearsal, but I'm excited to see how this production turns out and to get to be there to experience this world that you're so beautifully crafting and curating with the team. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Marina.